Well, hello, and welcome back to Carpo's channel. Voted the greatest YouTube channel running for over 63 years. I hope you're all doing well today. As I sat down to make a discussion, or to have a discussion with myself through a digital device that I would then afterwards upload to the internets, I was thinking about what it means to truly be free, and to really have freedom. And that was going to be the original topic for my video. And it was going to have to do with the fact that so many of us choose not to be free because we look at the world around us and we assume that all our rights are infringed upon, not realizing that a lot of our lack of freedom is chosen because of our internal issues and our inability to get away from our own problems that we create for ourselves. A good example would be somebody who, let's see, is trapped in an abusive relationship, and they're angry at something on the internet, or angry at the world, but really they're just taking out their frustrations on something else or someone else, if it may be their children or a friend or an enemy. There are a lot of people out there. But as I was thinking about freedom and how we basically eliminate our own personal freedoms by worrying about other people, I started thinking about a video came on randomly, and it was just kind of addressing the topic, and I started thinking about some other things, and I started thinking about this term that I've been using for the last several years, which is, I call it like the paradox of control or something like that. I don't even recall what I called it, but it was something that I'd heard a long time ago, which was to remember that there's two things in your life: things that are in your control and things that are out of your. I call it the circle of control. Things that you can control and change, and things that you can't. And the wisdom to know the difference. This is in the AA mantra as well. Grant me the power to change the things I can, the courage to change the things I can, whatever, the wisdom to know the difference. Basically being able to deal with the shit we can deal with and say fuck the rest of it. There's only so much we can do. Our time's limited. We're human beings. And even though things in our daily lives may be in control somewhat, other people, their emotions, how they feel, is completely out of our control. But just before, as I was thinking about that, somebody mentioned, and I don't recall the philosopher, but where the original term came from, and it was the trichotomy of control. And I was like, aha. But it also said not just the things you can change and the things you can't, but things that you may be able to change through effort, but you're not sure about. But I thought about this, and one of the biggest things that we have that we can't change is who we are. Now, this is important to remember here, that I actually believe that people do change. My opinions have changed over my lifetime, and many of my ideas, my expressions have changed. But the root self, what Carl Jung would call the ego, is not the same thing as what we project to the world. And there's a misunderstanding there. It's not that we show our world, according to Jung, we show the world our persona. And this persona can change depending on who we're with. For example, maybe we might speak a little bit more slang when we're hanging around some gangster friends than we might hanging around the office building. It's obvious that we do change to kind of fit the situation. Now, not everybody does, but it's kind of subtle a lot of the time. The point is that our persona can change slightly in certain situations, but that true root ego of who we are is much more difficult to budge that. And because of this, the person that you are deep down inside, the person that I am deep down inside, is never shown to the world. Your true wants, your true desires, your true feelings about things, often we don't even know these things because we're too busy living to really even know what we want. But what I've discovered about other people, for example, is that people give way too much thought to what others think about them. And I think it's one of the biggest wastes of time. One of the most harmful things that we can do is to sit and dwell on what other people are thinking, especially when it's what they're thinking about us. Because we'll never know, and it really doesn't matter. I want to make sure to make the distinction between that and, say, making a good impression, or being able to mend a relationship with a friend, let's say, or a mistake in a discussion. Somebody misunderstands what another person says, and you clarify, and you say, aha, and you move on. But as far as other than clarification, worrying about how others view you and your true self is never worth the time. And what I've found is often people will project. Projection is probably one of the most well known and overly used methods for people who are telling others, for example, how to live their life. It happens with parents and their kids. It happens with kids and their parents. It happens with school teachers. It happens with construction workers, bosses. Everywhere there's people who want to tell you, hey, this is how you should live your life. And when you're not living in a way that they think is conducive to their type of lifestyle, what they'll do is they'll point the finger at you and they will project their insecurities onto you. Or if you disagree with them, they'll tell you that you're this or that, when often you can see that that's exactly the kind of person they are. And understanding, I think, this psychological thing, it's so common, it's so regularly used, that almost every time people start calling me names or pointing the finger over a topic or a subject, whatever it might be, you can almost always guarantee that they're really seeing that because it's within themselves and something that bothers them. Not always, but quite often. But another concept in the Jungian philosophy is to remember that we are not the center of the universe. And I think that this is one that seems obvious at first glance. Well, of course, we're individuals. But what I mean by that is that a lot of people are quite arrogant to sit around and think that others are even thinking about them. You know what I mean? The idea that we think that others really even give us that much thought, some do, but we forget that we have this idea that we're everybody else is actors in our play, and that somehow we are the most important. There's a term for it, it's called solipsism, and solipsism is basically that you're the only mind. It's this, if you want to call it a philosophy, the philosophy that only you exist, and it might come down to kind of, I think, therefore I am, with Descartes. Basically, I can only know for sure that I think, therefore the whole world may be a play, everybody else may be fake, it may all be an illusion, but I know that I'm real. And I don't necessarily buy into that. It doesn't matter, though, even if it's true, because you're dealing with other minds, even if they're not real minds. You see what I mean? It's important that we learn how to talk to people, learn how to talk to one another. And at the same time, remember not to try to impress people. Because when we're trying to impress people, then what we're doing is setting ourselves up for failure. And I mean that because if something we do or a certain way we are already naturally impresses people, then that's natural impression. That's making an impression, and that's fine. But if we try to talk ourselves up, pretend that we're something that we're not, then that's not being authentic. Being authentic is the single most important thing that we can do for ourselves and others around us. It may be hard for a lot of people to find their authentic selves, but I think that maybe sometimes it's because we don't like part of our authentic selves. And I find parts of myself I don't like too. But if you're not authentic, then you really are just a sheep. I mean, there's no better definition. This was a Jungian, something he wrote about, is that you will become a sheep and be like everyone else. Perfect example, just coincidentally, I came across one of my favorite video YouTubers this morning, Lockpicking Lawyer. And the lockpicking lawyer just picks locks, and I've always been fascinated with lockpicking. And he was picking a bike lock, but the theme of the video was it was a Supreme brand bike lock. And he basically said, in my opinion, you're a fool if you spend 5 times more than the thing should cost just so it says a name on it. And I couldn't agree more. The brand Supreme is one of the biggest marketing gimmicks ever. But people buy it because they can wear the name Supreme on a shirt or on their shoes, spend $1,000 or more, and brag about it. Supreme, the company, sold a brick. It started as a skateboarding company way back, and a lot of people celebrate this kind of marketing crap. But they sold a literal brick with Supreme on it. I think it was like $300 or $400 on eBay. And, to each his own. People collect sneakers, people collect Supreme brand garbage, whatever they want to do. That's fine, that's their thing. The point being that a lot of people, they're not doing it for the pleasure of wearing the product. They're not wearing a brand name because it's comfortable. They're wearing it so they can wear their tags out and show everybody how much they spent on something. That's not being authentic. That's letting money determine who you are. It's like the middle-aged guy who goes out and buys a Corvette. Nothing wrong with owning a Corvette. And it doesn't matter if you put your hair, put the top down and you're bald and you got gray hair and you're having a good time. There's nothing wrong with that. But you got to realize that you're not impressing anyone. You're impressing yourself. But the whole idea is that it's the car that's impressing people. Here's the point I want to make here. I'm not trying to diss anybody who likes cool, fun things or expensive stuff. I want to say that there's one rule of thumb that I've always really used in my life to remind myself to keep grounded. And that's this. If literally, I say, dude, Josh, if you were thrown out on the street tomorrow and you had nothing and you lost everything you had, could you still talk to people? Could you still be a good person? I mean, literally naked on the streets. How would you fare? Or is everything that you are, does it depend on the things that you have? Like often a lot of wealthy people without their connections wouldn't have a clue how to survive, right? I'm not talking about basic survival. I'm talking about internal survival. How would you feel? Not how would you get stuff, but how would you feel inside? And this is totally separate from losing a family. I'd have to have my family with me because to me that's something I can't lose. That is a defining feature of me. But I've never made my car, obviously I wear hippie hats, right? I wear my hippie clothes, but I wear jeans and I wear normal shoes too. The thing is, I have no problem showing my feathers. I like peacocking, okay? Peacocking is a well-known phenomenon with young men that go out and, wear the Supreme brand, for example. That would be peacocking because the women would go, oh, he's got money because he can afford this. I'm getting way off topic here, but it's important because being authentic means that you can live your life without that crap. That you can live your life without wasting money on brand name junk you don't need because that does not define you. But you can still have a style. You can still have your own dance, your own thing. I'm trying to say it's important to be unique, but don't be unique to make somebody else money, because that's not being unique. Everybody else has the same Supreme fucking sweater. Okay, that's what I'm getting at. So, you're joining the flock, if you will. And if that works for you, so be it. But to move on, when it comes to finding yourself, there's a balance to not be a master or a slave. And this is important too. You don't want to be a master. You don't want to control other people. It's difficult enough to live our own lives, but it's a very difficult endeavor to control other people. And I'm not talking about just being a boss or leading a group or being a leader. I'm saying those who spend time trying to tell others what to do or how to live their lives are miserable people. And also, don't be a slave. Don't just let others tell you what to do. But don't be so stubborn in your own ways that you just refute everything that you hear. You know what I mean? Which is what's happening today. With like, oh, it's mainstream, so it must be a lie. Everything over here is a lie, and everything over here is true. We're so absolutist because we're so stuck in our mindsets. Not being a slave just means that we look at everything and we develop our own decision about what that means, and then we're brave enough to bring that forward and tell the world how we feel. In my opinion. The thing to finalize this is that we worry too much. And this is why I'm talking about this. We worry too much about ourselves, our lives, our futures, our past, but also about what other people think, and that shit just doesn't matter. If you ask anybody who's, say, a really successful YouTuber with like millions of subscribers, all the way to up to an actor or a politician or anybody who has a lot of people with eyes on them, they'll all say the same thing. You're always going to be hated by somebody. And you're always going to get threats. You're always going to be feared by some, hated by some, loved by some. It's just how it goes. And there will always be somebody who hates you just because they want to hate you. And we worry way too much about that. And there was a study done in England, and I don't know how accurate this study is, but like up to 30% of people every day worry about what they're going to wear that day, or how they look rather. 20% worry about what they're going to wear that day. I mean, an actual like worry, concern, like being concerned about this. The studies on average said that about 8% of the average life of an Englander in this region spends 8% of their life worrying. And this might just be casual worry, just like, oh man, I've got bills due, that kind of stuff. But 8%, we're talking about 2 entire years of your fucking life spent worrying. And you know what? This is what I've found. Most worries will cause you nightmares. They'll cause you outbreaks and acne. They'll cause you to produce various hormones. You can't eat right. You can't sleep right. You get depressed. You get anxious. And most of all, it produces cortisol in your bloodstream, which then you can increase your weight. And a lot of people who are stressed out gain a lot of weight. Learning to manage your stress is the first step towards being happy. Hands down. There's no way around it. And to eliminate one component of that stress, which is worrying about what other people expect from you or think you should be, it's worth it. And so, as I said, we only show the world our persona, not our true ego. And this can be proven with one simple example. Serial killers. You hear of all these stories, and all these people reporting how, oh man, they were such a nice person. You know, some of them were like, oh, this guy was creepy. But a lot of the times, these are people who live normal lives, who go out and explore and travel with people and hang out in groups and go to events, go skiing, do things that everybody else does, and then they have this secret for 20 years and dozens of bodies. The thing is, just knowing that should tell you something about persona versus ego. And what I'm getting at, the true person that was not the persona that he was putting onto the world. And neither is yours. And neither is mine. Before I go, I'd like to say, just because we have desires, wants, and needs that we don't show, or because we have these things that, you know, maybe we feel are just too much, maybe lavish or luxurious, things that maybe we don't need, but we still want them. Often there's more of a reason for not being our true selves and having all these things we desire, other than just not being able to obtain them. And if you follow me, sometimes in the back of our minds we know that having this thing or that thing comes with this burden or that burden. Such as, you know that you could get some money from this person, but then you would owe them and they'd always hold it against you. Or, you know, you could become, you know, wealthy by going over here and taking this thing and selling it to this person, but you wouldn't feel honest doing it, that thing. Our honesty, our integrity, and our quality of life can be ruined by making a bad deal just to gain money. And I think that money is holding so much of, you know, society back. Understanding it's an important part of trade and all that, but that's another story altogether. To come full circle, are we free? We can only be as free as we choose to be. And if we're allowing ourselves to worry about what other people think of us, anybody, first off, we're probably wrong about what they think about us. And second off, we're not going to gain anything by worrying. And third, if you really have an issue with somebody, or you want to, you know, have a problem with the way you present yourself in the world, whatever it may be, work on it. Talk about it. Because talking about things is the first step. And I know if there's more than one person involved, then often that's not possible. Some people will not talk about things on a serious or emotional level, so it makes it even harder. But most of the time, people are pretty open to that. And if you're honest with people, they'll be straightforward with you and speak in a clear and concise language that you can understand. So, with that said, hope you all are doing well, and I hope you continue to do well. And, you know, I would urge you to study the Jungian philosophy a little bit, and all of the philosophers, for that matter. I guess he was more of a psychologist, you know. But anyway, like Sigmund Freud, or Freud dude, if you remember Bill and Ted. So I'll talk to y'all next time, and be well. Hang on to each other, and don't worry about what the douchebags think. Do your own thing. Be authentic. Live your life. Peace.